From the Daily Wire exclusive, FEMA official ordered relief workers to skip houses with Trump signs. Whistleblower. It's almost unbelievable to think that somebody in the federal government would think that's okay. Now, this is crazy. A federal disaster relief official ordered workers to bypass the homes of Trump supporters as they surveyed damage caused by Hurricane Milton in Florida, according to internal correspondence obtained by the Daily Wire and confirmed by multiple federal employees. A FEMA supervisor told workers in a message to avoid homes advertising Trump as they canvassed Lake Placid, Florida, to identify residents who could qualify for federal aid. Internal messages viewed by the Daily Wire reveal the supervisor, Marnie Washington, relayed this message both verbally and in a group chat used by the relief team. Multiple government employees told the Daily Wire. The government employees told the Daily Wire that at least 20 homes with Trump signs or flags were skipped from the end of October and into November due to the guidance, meaning they were not given the opportunity to qualify for FEMA assistance. Images shared with the Daily Wire show that houses were skipped over by the workers who wrote in the government system message such as Trump sign, no entry per leadership. Take a look at this. It says, implement best practices, avoid homes advertising Trump. And apparently this is going down only a few days before the election.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to come up with some kind of rationalization, like people with Trump signs outside their homes are more likely to be unfriendly and own firearms, and we're afraid of them. But regardless, whenever there's any kind of investigation, or if these people are punished as they should be, we're going to be told it's a political prosecution, that we live in some kind of banana republic.
Completely
because every time they're held, bro, do you think I care? Do you think I'm saying it because I'm like, we can't do this? I don't want the liberals to be upset about our justice system. They're upset anytime anyone's punished.
Already, our good friends, the Krasensteins, are taking that statement from Trump's lawyer where he says, if Letitia James keeps violating Trump's rights with lawfare, they will put her in jail. And then he tweets, oh my God, oh heavens, this is fascism. They warned us about it. It's happening. Mm-hmm. And all the liberals are like, we knew it. And it's just laughable because anybody, they're liars. They know they're liars. We know they're liars.
That's right.
The charges against Donald Trump have no underlying crime and literally make no sense. And they should be investigated by the DOJ. But now liberals are acting like that's Trump being a fascist.
Yeah, but in this case, first of all, this violates like a dozen laws to withhold federal aid from people based on their politics. That's so illegal. It's illegal on so many different levels that obviously, and I know that FEMA has said, I think in their statement they said that they've identified the person, and they didn't even quite say they fired them. They said that they're no longer in that position or something. But that's not enough. Obviously, we need a prosecution. And the thing about this, when you see jail, obviously, and when you see the story, it's like, they're so flagrant. Like if I had seen this headline and it wasn't from the Daily Wire, I don't know if I would believe it at first. And not because I doubt that the federal government would do this. It's only because it's so on the nose and it's so blatant. And then of course it's from the Daily Wire. So I'm like, well, of course I know that Daily Wire is trustworthy, and it's been confirmed by FEMA. But it is shocking. It's again, not that they did it, but that they put it in writing. Yeah. That they would just write that down and say, yep, skip the Trump houses, because they think they could just do whatever they want, and there will be no accountability at all. So just think about that. And this is you have to keep in mind, these are federal workers under Biden's administration, assuming also all of these workers were assuming that Kamala would win. And so they thought there's just no way this will ever come out. And so we can do whatever the hell we want, and we can tell people we're doing it and put it in writing. It's so flagrant and blatant.
Disgusting.
Real quick, once they would skip it, they would write down in their surveys not able to access property.
Wow,
that's crazy.
Just deny it. It obviously none of us here are surprised. Obviously, this is something that is honest. It's standard. It's something that is expected ever since Lois Lerner and the IRS scandal. And which is over 10 years ago now. I don't know actually when it was happening, but Barack Obama was president I think it was like around 2012, 13 or something like that when it was going on. But this is just the norm.
That's right.
The idea that there's not political persecution, there's not bias from Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was 95% for Kamala Harris. 95%. That is not representative of the United States. That is representative of a uniparty. And when you say uniparty, people look at you as if you're some kind of extremist or some kind of crazy person. It is purely ideological in DC, and the entire town needs to be gutted. Everybody needs to lose their job. I'm completely fine with shutting the whole government down and restructuring it all at about, and maybe you get 25% of what's there actually.
Vivek wanted to fire, I think, half the federal government.
Wouldn't it be wonderful?
Which is a great start. This also, by the way, this story really, it really sheds light on, we know what happened in Florida. Well, we also know what happened in North Carolina, where to us, to us peons and peasants, it seemed as though the federal government just abandoned these people, that many of them in the redder parts of, Asheville's very liberal, but the surrounding counties, very red part of North Carolina. And it seemed like from the outside that they were just being abandoned to drown. And you had to wonder if that was politically motivated. And of course, the media said, well, how dare you even suggest such a thing? And now we see this. And now I have to wonder, is there some directive from some FEMA official somewhere saying, yeah, leave North Carolina alone. They'll be fine. They're Trump supporters.
I mean, It wouldn't shock me. This is how the left has operated historically. You look at the Holodomor, and the entire argument was there just happened to be this famine in Ukraine. And even though they were exporting grain while everyone there was starving to death, this was not politically targeted. We weren't trying to kill our political enemies. What the left basically always does is they deprive basic necessities that they've been in charge of, or placed in charge of giving to people from them. And it's always a coincidence. There's always some reason that it just happens to be the case that their political enemies are being punished.
That's it.
Matt, you made a point earlier where you said if you didn't read this from the Daily Wire, you wouldn't have believed it at first. And this is a massive messaging problem for the right, because as you pointed out, Phil, people are afraid of being called crazy. And the left has done such a good job poisoning the well against bluntly describing the things that they're doing. And when you go to people and you just describe things that left-wing politicians and pundits have said, as well as the actual party platform of the Democratic Party, people will regard you like a crazy person. I mean, Kamala Harris literally said she wanted to fund sex change operations for illegal aliens. And I understand why people hear that and they don't want to believe it, because that sounds like something that The Simpsons would put in a Fox News headline in an episode they made 10 years ago.
This is, to your point, that's exactly right. The left will hear this story and they will say, oh, this is not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
That was one person, and they'll minimize it as much as they can. Even though this is one step away from literally not helping people in the middle of an emergency, right? It's like they're not going to houses to offer aid. It's one step away from saying, don't go to that house while it's actually raining and while the floodwaters are going up. It's one step away from that. And that is one step away from things like the Holodomor. It's the same impulse.
Keep in mind, just to go back to the point about how flagrant this is, which again is the only thing that makes it, that gives you pause at first. So like, could that really be, they're that blatant about it? So the fact that they're that blatant tells you something about the culture in FEMA, which is not a surprise. But if you have one official who's willing, again, to put this in writing, not just that they set it off the record in some meeting, but they put it in writing, then that tells you something about the culture there. It tells you that this official felt, I mean, obviously, if FEMA is filled with people like us, by that I mean just like normal common sense people, even if you are a far left FEMA official, you wouldn't put that in writing because you'd be worried about this exact thing happening. So they obviously are in an environment where they know they're around like-minded people. Yeah. I think we can assume that there's a lot of this kind of thing going on. And so to them, it was no big deal to put it in writing.
Well, and at some point, it's clear.
General Flynn said this morning on the Culture War podcast that we all dodged a bullet with this election. And then you see a story like this, and I want to stress, in a situation like a hurricane where people are in need of disaster relief, this aid could be life and death. In this area in Florida, I expect there's probably a lot of elderly who are in desperate need. This is, as Phil was saying, 1 degree away, but this is them saying they're okay with you dying in a disaster. They will not provide you the relief that you deserve as a citizen of this country, as a taxpayer, because they don't like your worldview.
Yeah, exactly. And there's never going to be any accountability for this, and there certainly won't be any accountability for eroding trust in American institutions. The fact that this is true should and will do more damage to American trust in federal agencies than a million January 6th could have. You get my point. A figure will come along and point out the lies and hypocrisy of the media and of the ruling class, and it's always made out to seem as if this person just pulled it out of nowhere and they hypnotized everybody. Everyone loved the media, and then Donald Trump came along and he convinced people not to like them anymore. People loved the government, but then people like Ron Paul came along and started convincing them not to. I mean, the reality is the federal government hates us as people. They hate our way of life. They detest normal people, and they don't care when you die. and they're in charge of ensuring you live. And by the way, the federal government, it spends between $15 and $19 billion. I believe it's closer to $19 billion every single day. They're capable of providing basic disaster relief. When they weren't doing that, I think it should have been apparent enough that it was intentional.
I think this is very obviously extremely disgusting. What stands out to me is this is FEMA. The organization is FEMA, and they're supposed to, like, you join FEMA because you want to help people and you want to help others. And to think that you'll just pass over people during a hurricane or what have you during a natural disaster like this is so disgusting. It's so outrageous that even the workers, in a quote here from the Daily Wire article, by the way, the guy who broke this story, Leif Lamahu, did a great job here. But the workers said, I thought we could go help and make a difference. When we got there, we were told to discriminate against people. It's almost unbelievable to think that somebody in the federal government would think that's okay. I'm glad there's at least somebody in FEMA who saw what was going on and thinking, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw the, if you guys covered the video a few weeks ago of I don't think it was FEMA, but they were federal disaster workers who were working on moving some logs from one part of the yard to the other part of the yard.
What was this one? I didn't see it.
It's like a dozen people, one guy handing a log to another guy over the course of like 15 feet.
A human chain, 20 people moving a 10-pound log 20 feet.
Yeah.
But this is what happens. You've got these federal agencies that are full of people, most of whom have really nothing to do. There's too many of them. They're just always justifying their jobs. And they're also blatantly politically partisan. So it's no surprise when this happens.
Oh, there's hope. Like, thank God that Trump got elected. And if we're lucky, then, Elon Musk will actually be put in a position to do real cuts on the government. I mean, everyone knows he walked into Twitter and cut the personnel by like 80% or something like that. And there were a couple bumps and hiccups while they were getting used to having the new structure. But now it works the same. It's perfectly fine. So hopefully, if there's, if we're lucky, he will get into a position to be able to actually do something, and there won't be too much obstructionism from Congress or whatever. Because I know that there are a lot of positions that take an act of Congress to actually get rid of. But there's a lot you can do with the purse strings and by cutting funding and by telling, from the executive saying you don't do this. Your priority isn't this. That's what Obama did for a lot of things. He would say to like that. I think that's what. I think it was the Dreamer. No, I'm not sure if it was Dreamers, but there was some policy that Barack Obama said, don't worry about enforcing this. Do these other things. These are the priorities. This act of Congress, we're not going to worry about. And if Obama can do it, then President Trump can do it as well. So
every president's. This is one of the dirty little secrets about Trump, is they were trying to paint him to be Hitler, and one of the reasons why that narrative never caught on is that. Not only was he not a fascist dictator, but he was probably the most restrained president we've had in like a century.
Yeah.
And he was very reluctant to wield executive power, I think almost to a fault. I mean, that was, if there was one great flaw in the first Trump administration, it's not that he was this fascist dictator who was drunk on his own power, but he was actually a little bit too, in my estimation, too hesitant to wield power.
He wanted to be liked too much.
Right. Well, that and just he issued fewer executive orders than the three most recent presidents before him, and I understand that. Like we don't like executive orders generally. You don't want to have to govern that way, but it is going to require that if you actually want to drain the swamp, you're going to have to go in and wield executive power legally, but you're going to have to do it.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.